I have mentioned that it wasn't until Chris Evans got cast that Hollywood got Captain America right. I've pointed out how heavily flawed the 1944 movie serial is, and the two 1979 would-be TV series pilots were. This movie makes those look respectively Oscar and Emmy worthy. Welcome to my channel, KC, that's me, Carrie Chug, the Sledge Storyteller, here to talk about the wonderful world of storytelling and to open up discussion about how we can tell the best stories we can in talking about movies, everything good, everything bad, everything in between, from a storytelling standpoint.
So 21st Century Studios was founded by Menachem Golan after his infamous Canon Film Group, co-owned with Yoram Globus, went bankrupt. Golan took the Captain America rights that Canon had and gave us this. All loaded with half-baked plot points, casting misfires, and head-spinning plot decisions, even for a low-budget movie. But we'll start from the beginning. Remember Red Skull in Captain America First Avenger? German, like in the comics? Here they decide to make this Red Skull an Italian. Now, okay, Fascist Italy was an ally to Nazi Germany, but what makes this decision so perplexing is that they always surround him with German-speaking Nazis during the initial phase of the movie. He starts out as an apparent child prodigy and is taken by the Nazis against his will. So here we have a tragic Red Skull, but like so many other plot points here, there's little to no gravitas where you'd expect it. You're never meant to feel sympathy for him over it, and ultimately serves as a weapon in the end. More on that later. And yes, for presumably budget cut reasons, they tell us that Red Skull had plastic surgery to make him look less Red Skull and more like a cheap Scarface. Captain America, played by Matt Salinger, like I've mentioned many times lately, that one issue with low budget superhero movies, there's not enough money to get a good actor for the lead role. You wouldn't wonder if he's the leading man material if you'd readily know what other movies he's been in. But most of his roles have been very small in various movies. But his Captain America story starts out as Steve Rogers about to be guinea pig to a top secret US project, and yet everyone who is close to him seems to be privy to that secret. As Golden Age Captain America lore holds, Steve Rogers is a sickly young man, in this case with polio, which I like since polio was a big problem at that time. We get even a better feel of how well protected this top secret operation is as we watch how easily Steve and his government escorts enter the laboratory, where Dr. Boselli, who did the same experiment on Red Skull, gets to work on Steve. We watch as Steve, locked in a lab chair, gets hit by a rejuvenating strobe light. I can't say that his exposure to it looks all that direct, and there are people close enough that you'd think that they would pick up residual powers. But just like Captain America First Avenger, the Doctor is murdered by a traitor, which scraps plans to rejuvenate other sickly men into super soldiers, in this case meaning that Steve, as Captain America, has to go it alone in the secret mission to stop Nazis from launching this deadly rocket that is aimed to be launched at the White House. He makes short work of enemy soldiers before making it to the proverbial boss level, where he gets humiliated and trounced by Red Skull, who then straps Captain America to that same rocket. So, side note, I like The Dark Knight Rises a lot, and while I know there are issues for many fans, I've never heard anyone complain about how Bane's trouncing Batman was depicted. So what's the difference here? What I see is that Captain America's initial success in the comics when he came out during the World War II era was due to his repeatedly wreaking havoc against the Nazi opposition, succeeding in mission after mission, occasionally failing, but that would just be part of the middle plot. But much like Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy had established himself as a powerful force for the common good. It feels like a gut punch for that kind of hero to outright fail in his first mission. And the movie doesn't even do a good job of telling a story of Cap redeeming himself after a humiliating defeat. And you can't help but think that those mapping out the MCU learn that lesson here, that it works better to devote the whole first movie to the World War II era and to not have to scrunch that in with the modern era. Anyway, just before the rocket launches in a ham-fisted heroic effort, Cap manages to grab Red Skull by the wrist with the threat to take him with him upon the launch. Red Skull has the option of killing Cap outright, another option of cutting Cap's hand off, but instead he cuts his own hand off. One of the worst examples of my number one storytelling pet peeve. And we get just one feeble moment later in the movie reflecting upon that moment, leaving it completely pointless. The rocket launches, and after arriving in Washington, D.C., Cap manages to kick the rocket's back wing so that it tilts up, barely missing the White House, and keeps on going to land in Alaska in the most cartoony fashion imaginable. But just before the near miss in Washington, a young, high-spirited boy named Tom Kimball has snuck out of his hotel room to take pictures of that same moment, where he manages to take a picture of Cap's face as he flies overhead. How slow does a rocket have to fly to get that kind of shot? Anyway, we then watch a half-decent newspaper headline montage where the key historical events are highlighted, interlaced with headlines of the educational and political milestones Tom Kimball reaches until he finally becomes President Kimball, played by Ronny Cox, where the only cabinet member you see is Darren McGavin as the chief commander of the military. But in keeping with Silver Age Captain America lore, Cap is kept in suspended animation, his stuck-out glove reminiscent of a cartoony frozen person where whatever's sticking out becomes an easy to handle. But he breaks out of the ice and begins his journey back to the US. And what drives me nuts the most is I'm temporarily jumping ahead in making my point, and somewhat familiar, the superhero vehicle issue. You've got ordinary vehicles serving as the Batmobile in the Batman serials, then Captain America, whose trademark vehicle is his motorcycle. Here he rides just a stray motorcycle once in his own serial. In this movie, there was enough budget for it to have 4 motorcycles.
Only once do we see Steve Rogers ride any kind of cycle.
What are you doing?
Hang on, Sharon. This bike's got no brakes.
A picture taken of Cap fresh out of the ice finds its way to President Kimball's childhood friend, Sam Kolowitz, played by Ned Beatty, who travels north to pick up Cap, who gets spooked by seeing brands imported by former World War II Axis powers.
Now, I'll be fair, the lackluster performance is not all on Salinger, but also a big part of that is the script and the direction, and one good example of that is here.
Would you please pull over the car? I am going to get sick.
Oh, okay, all right. Captain, are you okay? Yeah. Hold it. No, wait. Don't leave me out here.
So complete jerk Captain America makes his way back to his home community, has a sappy reunion with his old friend Bernie, and meets her daughter Sharon, who will become his new flame. All that before Red Skull's cronies crash the party, shoot Sam, Bernie, and her husband. Then Sharon becomes Cap's sidekick. Dr. Baselli's diary becomes the new MacGuffin, and you get that. At that's got her research on how the super soldier conversion works. Not much is developed just directly off that. And then they make their way to Italy, where the president is being held prisoner, partly accomplished by traitorous Darren McGavin to have a chip implanted in his brain to become his political puppet.
And after getting a lead, Steve decides again to be a mega jerk.
Then, after a resulting lame depiction of Steve's learning not to underestimate those who are helping him, they are let in by the people who have the tape recording of the horrific incident of Red Skull's piano lesson and capture, somehow getting a perfect recording with this, a reference most of Generation Z won't understand, is very likely. They make their way through a series of scuffles with Red Skull's henchmen before stealing the aforementioned bike, and that leads to...
Sharon, could you pull over for a minute? I think I'm gonna be sick.
Captain America is car sick? Are you okay? What are you doing? Wait a minute, what are you doing?
I can't take you into danger, Sharon. That much at least I can do for Bernie. Thanks for your help.
Thanks for my help. Open this door.
Another scuffle with henchmen, and then Steve finally suits up again. Now, the costume by 1990 standards, it's not that bad, minus the rubber ears. But I'll be honest, I have to look hard to really notice them. That's just me. I've only seen it mentioned in IMDb, but apparently the costumers tried to be comic book accurate with the ear holes like you see in the comics, but that proved to be too painful for Matt Salinger. So be that true, then I sympathize with Salinger. But the action is pretty run-of-the-mill, and the key point many critics will highlight, and deservedly so,
Mr. President! Thanks.
then more run-of-the-mill action, a dizzying run of cuts, the distracting emotional deep cut here, mentioned before,
The scientist!
mentioned before, and finally the killing blow. And you tell me if this is a fourth wall break. In the end, it's a poorly thought out movie with an hour and a half running time that didn't take opportunity to flesh it out in key scenes to give it any substance that might take it to 2 hours. Director Albert Pune, who also played the general in the initial phase, claimed that the movie was shot to be more fleshed out and that the final cut did the movie a disservice. Doesn't excuse certain scenes he must have filmed. Pune had been a director of some of Cannon's movies, and it very much feels like a holdover from Cannon. It has enough out there moments to make it a good watch with a group for giggles, but that's about as good as it gets, as good as it possibly can get.
So that's my take on the 1990 Captain America movie. Agree, disagree, something I left out? Please let me know in the comment section. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe or follow me on Instagram. As always, a link to order Sledge number 1 or 2 on Indie Planet. I'll have the link there. You can get them in either format, digital or paper. Same case with Sledge number 1 on Kindle. But let's all look for civility amid all the bad news out there. Let's try to be kind to each other. Let's try to solve problems without violence and avoid any social, political upheaval, at least not add to it. But everyone be safe and God bless.